Muy bien, muy buenos días. Mi
Very
nombre
good.
es
Good day
Daniela
to everyone.
Tubellachi,
My
coordino el
name is
programa para la
Daniela
consolidación de los
Tubeyachi. I
sistemas de protección y
coordinate the
protección
program
integral
for
de derechos de niños y
coordination of
adolescentes del Instituto
children's and
Interamericano
teenagers'
del
rights
Niño, la
of
Niña y
Instituto
Adolescentes.
Interamericano of
El IN ha venido brindando
Teenagers and
asistencia
Children.
técnica a
The Inc.
cada
has
una de las
been
instancias de los
providing
foros CIPINA.
technical
Y por
assistance to all the
supuesto,
instances
somos
of Sipinna
parte de la
Forum. And
actual
of course, we're
comisión
part of the
organizadora internacional
current
de esta cuarta edición.
international
Desde este
commission
lugar les damos
that
la más
organizes this
cordial
first, fourth
bienvenida
edition.
a
From
todos y a
this
todos quienes se
place,
conectan
I
el día de
greet
hoy
you
para
all
este segundo
who
webinar de
are coming
trabajo rumbo a
online
lo
to
que
the
será la
second
instancia
work
híbrida el 21 y
online
22 de
work
julio.
webinar for the
El día de hoy
hybrid instance
trabajaremos en torno
in
a dos de los cuatro
Ju
temas elegidos.
July and
En
towards
primer
September.
lugar,
We will
crianza
work on
positiva,
four subjects
propuesto de
today.
acuerdo a los
Positive
criterios para
raising
este cuarto foro por el Estado
criteria
SUNY,
for this fourth
México. Y en
forum
segundo lugar, el
from
seguimiento
the
a las
city states
recomendaciones de los foros CIPINA,
to follow up
propuesto
on
por los estados que
recommendations
fueron
of
sede
on
en
CIPIN forum
anteriores ediciones del foro.
proposed by states that
Díganse
were
México, Uruguay y Paraguay. Estas
that
instancias
held
de
the
trabajo en
forum.
formato
Mexico,
webinar
Uruguay,
están
Paraguay.
concebidas desde un proceso
These
multisectorial.
formats
En la
come from
medida que
a
contamos con la participación de
multi-sector
estados, organizaciones
process,
internacionales,
state
sociedad civil y
organization, civil
representantes de
societies,
colectivos de niños,
and
niñas y adolescentes,
representatives of
con el
children and
firme
collect and
propósito de
teenagers
dialogar
collectives
y
with the purpose
reflexionar en
of
torno a
having a
prácticas
dialogue
liberadoras y
and
obtener al final del
dialogue
proceso una
from
síntesis que será insumo
certain
esencial
questions
para la
and provide
democracia
a
de Nuevo León,
summary
que
that will
terminará
be very
validándose
important
en
for Nuevo
septiembre de
León,
este año.
the
En ese
declaration,
sentido,
which
sobre
will
los
be
temas en
validated
torno a
in
los que dialogaremos
September
el día
this
de
year.
hoy,
So what we
resaltar
will
que los
dialogue,
llamados niños, niñas y
our
adolescentes
dialogue today
requieren la
is to
formación
highlight
en
that
crianza positiva para sus madres y
the
padres, donde les enseñen formas para
positive
establecer diálogo, escucha
upbringing of
activa,
children
trato
where
igualitario y
dialogue is
efectivo,
being
según
established,
un extracto de las
uh,
consultas realizadas por la
equality,
Secretaría de México Cipina en los años
and
2018 y
from the
2019
Secretary of
respectivamente,
Subpoena
a una
in
población determinada
2018
de
and
niños, niñas y
19,
adolescentes
there's a
en
certain
territorio
population
mexicano.
of children
Finalmente,
and
la importancia de dar
teenagers in
seguimiento
Mexican
a los
territory.
compromisos
Finally, the
asumidos
importance of
en
following up
anteriores
on
instancias del
the
foro
commitments
es un desafío a
from
nivel
the
internacional
other
y nacional.
instances of the
Desafío que
forum.
plantea este
It's
cuarto
a
foro
challenge we have
CIPINA y que
internationally.
nosotros
In
pensamos
this
es
fourth
necesario
Sipina
asumir
forum,
para
we feel
buscar
it's
formas de
necessary to
articulación que
assume
permitan
to
el cumplimiento y el monitoreo
narrate
de las
in
recomendaciones
a certain way
consensuadas
that
por
will
estados,
allow
por la sociedad civil, por
compliance
las
by the
organizaciones
states, by the civil
internacionales y no lo menos
societies,
que por los niños,
international
niñas y
organizations, and of
adolescentes
course,
de la
children and
región.
teenagers of the
Desde el IN
region.
tomamos este
From
desafío como
the
oportunidad
lean,
de trabajo
we have
para
this
seguir
challenge
trabajando
as a work
por la
opportunity
consolidación de
to
los
keep on
sistemas de
working
promoción y
towards
protección de
the
derechos.
consolidations
Sin más,
of the
empecemos
systems
esta
of
jornada de
protection
trabajo. Muy
of
bienvenidos y
rights.
bienvenidas a
So,
todas.
with nothing
Saludos
further,
especiales a los
we
niños y
will
adolescentes que
start
nos acompañan
this
el día de hoy
work
y
session.
les cedo la palabra
And
a
I greet
Fernando
the
Gal,
children and the
que estará
teenagers that
moderando
accompany
este
us
primer
today.
espacio.
And
Adelante, Fer.
I pass the floor to Fernando Gal. Thank you very much, Daniela, to all the organizers. I greet also Link TV, which is recording this transmission. So welcome to the webinars of the fourth forum for promotion and protection of children and teenagers' rights. I want to remind you that this is a space of dialogue, of exchanging experiences, good practices to develop actions that will encompass all the population and to improve cooperation between countries and the members within the region. As Daniela mentioned, the commitments that we will have in Nuevo León to summarize for a declaration, a text with commitments of the institutions, the children, teenagers, experts, and the government. So just to remind you that this webinar is thought of as a way to exchange proposals between everyone involved. So this is why we invite you all to speak and to speak in a simple way, free of concepts and PowerPoint complex presentations. And as the children and teenagers say, what is of us goes with us. So in this sense, they are here. So let's speak clearly and let's make our interventions uh, clear. So let's imagine that this is a house that we're building. Our declaration is a house in which the foundations of this house are set by the teenagers and children, so everyone else will be laying bricks upon this with your proposals, with your ideas. So each person of any age can share here. So we will divide the webinar in a few parts. The first one, we will start off by the first three detonating questions. Then we will go question by question. I will ask the teenagers present, which with whom we've been working very hard. I thank you for being here with us. And the people that have already organized their questions, so start off with answers, and there will be an opportunity for 5 or 6 participants after the teenagers set these foundations, these bases, these first detonating questions. Anyone from each age group can state their proposals, their recommendations. If there's time, we will make further questions, which will help us analyze, reflect upon the subjects better. And if you're watching us through Olin TV, through Facebook, please state your questions, comment, but please also propose so your voice can be taken into account and used here. Daniela mentioned this. I would just like to mention it again. Unfortunately, in our region of Americas, of the Americas, there's an unfair treatments from adults towards children and teenagers based on forgetfulness, rudeness, hitting them. They have, the teenagers and children, a better possibility of developing themselves in a happy way, in a healthy way, not through fear, not through orders. This webinar wants to get to know the opinion of good treatment from teenagers that will speak today. This is for us adults to practice proper treatment. We have to know what it is. How do we act upon it or from it? And it's important for us, the adults, to know what they feel, what they think, so we can put it into practice. And once we've said this, the first question is, we have 3 questions. Remember that these webinars, the subjects are divided in two. We're in the first part of the positive raising. We'll have positive parenting. We'll have another webinar on other subjects. So you consider that positive treatment is good for children and teenagers? I want to ask Diana from Honduras, whom I greet, and Maria from Costa Rica. I would like them to take the floor. So who will start, Diana or Maria?
Inicio. Sí.
I'll start, Diana.
Bueno, lo que se les
Please
da
go ahead,
y
Diana.
enseña a los niños y a
What
los
children
adolescentes
are given
ahora,
and
los
taught
niños, niñas y
now,
adolescentes lo darán a la sociedad. Harmony.
children and
Muy
teenagers,
buenos días a todos y todas. Es un
I'm
gusto
speaking on
poder estar
behalf of
con
the Society
ustedes
Harbinger.
el día de hoy. Mi nombre
It's
es
a
Diana
joy
y
to be
tengo 20
sharing with
años
you
y vivo en
today.
Honduras.
I'm Diana, I'm
Esta
15 years old and
actividad
I'm
se
from
realiza a
Honduras.
los niños, niñas
Positive
y
parenting
adolescentes de
is good
varias
for
maneras.
teenagers
Fomenta un ambiente seguro y
and
amoroso
children
y
because it
promueve el desarrollo y el bienestar
promotes
emocional. En definitiva, los
development,
adolescentes son un
emotional
reflejo de
well-being,
una niñez,
and we're the
ya sea
reflection of
saludable
a
o no. Y
childhood,
estos
whether
vienen de una
it's
crianza
healthy or
positiva
not.
que
If they
enseña a
live
tener una
in
mejor calidad de vida.
positive parenting, they will have a better quality of life, and it'll help the children's opinions to, if they're listened to, for them to have the confidence to speak to their parents and find values so they can be people that do good, that promote change, to improve the society, that they can develop emotional stability, high self-esteem, confidence in themselves. So positive parenting is about promoting an environment that is positive, affectionate, safe, and so that they can have positive emotional and physical development. This provides them with the means to face challenges in their life, have good society relationships in society, have a strong bond with their parents, with the society, especially between children and parents, respect, empathy, emotional support, and for them to have values such as tolerance, responsibility, love, amongst others, and feel protected, and they can relate to people around them, and it's effective in managing defying behavior and to face daily challenges. In the same sense, with a positive parenting, children and teenagers have a better probability of getting good grades, have an academic development, and to develop their cognitive abilities. It's a fundamental part of every individual, this positive parenting, and it contributes to the development of future resilient, emotionally stable generations, which will have a positive impact on the general development of each country. Thank you. Thank you very much, Diana. You're saying very important things from the organized group, the one you've been working with. So before this, I would like to ask as favor to Maria if she can share her participation with us, Maria from Costa Rica, and then we would move further to other participants. Great. So everyone have a good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Mora. I greet you all. I'm 70 years old. I'm from Costa Rica. Costa Rica. Positive parenting is one of the most important factors in growth, so they can develop in a healthy manner with love, have security, safety, and it helps us to um, face challenges in life. Parents are the main factor in positive parenting with children and teenagers. Besides improving communication, promoting more confidence, love, and a healthy environment in which they they always know they have their parents' help. They have positive parenting, a positive beginning in their life where they're listened to and they know that they're loved. And this should be at a worldwide level to know they have these, they know that what they feel and they can feel secure. And this will help at a worldwide level. Thank you very much, Maria. Just to remind you that what Maria and Diana and the rest of children are saying of the children is work that they've developed with the representatives of different organizing groups in the Americas. So just to summarize it, what Maria and Diana said, what we receive, we will give back. It's like a mirror in positive parenting. It provides us with safety. It helps us be loving. Teenagers are the reflection of good or bad treatment since they're children, since they're young. It provides confidence, high self-esteem. They say if I'm doing well internally, I'll do well in school. I'll be able to face challenges. Mom and dad, the primary caretakers, are the basis for this, and they both spoke of a good treatment means that they listen to me, that I'm being listened to. So I'd like to hear other people, adults, guys and girls that are here. So, based on these foundations, what can we further contribute? So you can just raise your hand, you or start speaking out. And if you talk, please switch your camera on. Good. So is there anyone? Great. Come on, Paula Lazaro. Uh, just an apology. Good day, good morning to everyone. I couldn't raise my hand through the computer, but you can see us here. So thanks very much to Diana and Maria for their comments. Adding to what they said, I would like to mention the benefit of prevention that positive parenting can provide. Because if their children, if teenagers are raised this way respectfully, you can prevent child abuse. That's one of the benefits that I think that it contributes. And just to mention that a policy that will lead to positive parenting, because sometimes us as parents, we don't have the tools to raise our children. So to strengthen the family, it would help us, the parents, to exert our parenting. And for example, in the state of Nuevo León, in our children's rights laws, we have a right that is assisted parenting that strengthens the parents so they can carry out their parenting, positive parenting. So my proposal is a public policy to provide parents with these tools. And thank you, Paul, and thank you for this example. I think that what children have said about their self-esteem, about confidence, the example that Paula states. So let's show parents about parenting and set it up as a rule in our society. Assisted parenting, how we help parents to learn. So now, please go ahead. Maria Julia Garcete. Good morning to everyone. Thanks very much to Diana, to Maria for their thoughts, which are the basis of this construction, the foundation. So, in the same sense, to add to this thoughts of on assisted parenting, it's a recommendation for educational spaces, to schools, to establish these bonds with families, these connections in a very concrete manner, in this range of the the rendering that public policy may have to emphasize this bond of school or educational space and family for assisted parenting and for these spaces, because during these past 3 years, all the situations we've been through, this bond has been fragmented, has been broken between educational spaces with family. So sometimes we assist with a certain analysis. Either it's a school complaining about the family or the family complaining about the school. So we should, in the framework of these policies, how can we recommend a bond or strengthen the family school bond? It would be like what you last mentioned. Yes, what I was saying, it's like to emphasize on
what Paula has
las
mentioned
políticas
in the
públicas
public policies
dirigidas a la familia o
directed
a la
towards the family or to
parentalidad
strengthening
poner
parenting
un énfasis especial
and to
en el
emphasize
vínculo de la escuela con la familia o el espacio
the bond
educativo con la
between
familia.
the school or the
Es como
educational
un
space
matiz
and
que
the
agrego
family.
ya
It's
a
like
lo que muy bien
a hue, a
explicaba Paula
tone
y
that I
decían Diana
want to,
y María.
want to add.
Lo voy a
What
poner todo en
Paula
el chat,
expressed and
Fernando.
what Maria mentioned. I thank you very much. And I think that a colleague from Bolivia was raising his hand. I don't remember his name, but yes, right wing community. No, sorry, correction, rights community. My greetings from Bolivia. There's something very interesting in these proposals that we've been systematizing. We're trying to systematize. And as a suggestion is something very interesting from the World Health Organization, which are the 10 abilities for life that strengthen and are based upon the Universal Human Rights Declaration, as well as the teenager and children's rights. One of them is the right to education. But to go beyond this aspect as the beginning of a specific public policy for the families of these children and teenagers, for them to understand what positive parenting is, because in the rural and urban regions, they feel that they have to correct based on a scolding, punishment. So they would have to be rethought of. And what we've heard from the teenagers that have a unique view and they're the future of a whole new generation, they will wager on education and positive parenting. So to grab these legal and resources and strengthen policies that might reinforce education from these 10 abilities for life to prevent sexual abuse, prevention of violence, and decision making, but also that we adults can understand and we can judge without harshness. So we can shed light on this. And perhaps I'm mistaken if we say that this is new, but to promote working hand by hand with teenagers and children, because sometimes we work on these public policies for positive parenting, but we're not listening to the children or teenagers. These are adults that pass judgment and they do not understand perfectly what education and positive parenting is about. So thank you very much and hello to you all. A greeting to you all. So it's very important for children to share this with us. So Patricia Santos and Diana, once again, good morning to everyone. Thank you for opening up this space. Thank you, Diana and Maria, for what they've been sharing with us. I think that precisely this proposal of speaking about parenting, it's not just about speaking of adults, because then we would be speaking about an adult-centric mission, but also to think of children and teenagers. And I think that it's right where we're headed towards with these new paradigms, to listen to be attentive, to be sensitive or sensitive, and be with them, accompany them in their process and their trajectories of development, so we can share these resources and learn. And it's very important what they've been sharing with us within these emotional resources. It's hard for adults these days. And if we were to speak of mental health, which we mentioned last call, I think this respect towards each other is what's important. And we as adults that are raising children, we have to walk with and validate as people their opinions. And I think also we have a very important challenge that with raising children with parentality, we don't do this alone. It's a very important challenge for adults, caretakers, that we are parenting to have these resources, because sometimes we come from experiences that we do not did not experiences that we did not live through, and to be with the families so we can conduct ourselves together. And this will allow us to not have an expectation of perfect parents. No, we're learning. And this is a very powerful challenge that we have, but we can accompany each other. And these spaces precisely allow us to, well, to be sensitive communities. And this is where all our proposals lead us to work with parenting. Thank you, Patricia. So we're looking at the importance of strengthening relationships between adults and children, but not just caretakers, but also within the schools. No one is born knowing all this, but we must move forward as a group, as a collective. So important. Thank you. Diana, please go ahead. Well, I had forgotten to mention I represent the NIAS, and I decided to be a spokeswoman to share my point of view between children and teenagers that are working in a joint manner in this subject, because we may have perspectives, different points of view. We would like to share them and be listened to. The consequences are for us mainly, and also to develop communication skills, obtain knowledge. And these are the experiences that will help me grow as a person, in the same way to motivate and empower all the children and teenagers that are active and committed to this to these projects. And then, well, I invite you to come together and raise your voice, so we will be listened to. The importance of listening, 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 because that's what will strengthen us. These bonds and the relationship, it's so important. Thank you very much. So we will take move on to the other question. Our colleague from Bolivia was kind of stating it. So we have,
Perdón, Fernando.
sorry, Fernando? Yes, Jose?
Sí, por favor.
Would you like me to stop? Yes.
Ok, gracias. Muy gentiles.
So, thank you. You have been very gentle. A special salutation or greeting to all the teenagers and children from the Americas that are here right now. I'm very grateful for the space that this team has promoted, and also to Maria Julia that is here with us. I would like to strengthen the proposal once again that you are speaking of, Diana and Maria, about the importance of listening in the construction, and Maria Julia was also adding up on this, the importance of listening in the development of public policy. I think that as directors, as we need a space for this active listening, not just in positive parenting issues, but also other issues that are beside it. As the Commission states, their right to participation, and at least in Costa Rica case, we're validating the public policy after the participation of hundreds of children and teenagers that have been speaking of these subjects. And above all, public policy. So things are like this. Maria, representing the network of teenagers, they have also been spokespeople of that feeling, and not just as Diana mentioned. It's not just about listening, it's also being listened to and being listened to seriously. So I think this is a calling on the adult world, because sometimes we just participate operatively and we do not move beyond it. Well, they've already participated, and it's not just participating, it's to listen to them seriously and add them on. what they know in public policy that we're working with. So we don't remain in our adult centricity, which is okay, we already asked them, it's all good, let's just move on. Ourselves as technicians doing whatever we want. So thank you, Diana, for calling our attention on this subject. And beyond positive parenting is active listening from all of us as directors, as parents. So have a good morning. And yes, well, I'm not participating, actually, I'm moderating. But I would also add on to this that this be translated in facts. And it happens in things that we can observe because the children are telling us this helps our self-esteem. You need to help the teachers, you need to help the parents make it happen. So how can we move into action, not just talk about it as adults? So thank you very much, Jose. There are some interventions in the chat. I'm going to read them very quickly, and then we'll head over to the second question. Well, unfortunately, I don't have any audio, but I'd love to listen to you, Diana. Nice to meet you. It's very interesting that you made this decision and that you're working on these policies. There are so many laws, but they're not listened to. The children, teenagers, what do they need? What they want? How are they? Where are they most vulnerable? So listening is something that's being repeated. So positive parenting is also means for children and teenagers to speak to their parents and to understand that their rights involve this active listening. So there's another participation. Yes, we have to strengthen the adults. No one knows this when they're born. So I'm headed towards a second question. We have established the baseline and we're going to head over to another floor of this house of positive parenting. Do you know if there are laws, public actions in all the for all the population in your country to promote positive parenting? So we're going to ask Luisa Fernanda from Colombia, who participated last week, to please provide us with her opinion, and then we'll ask Melissa from Peru to share with us the group we've been working with so she can share her opinion with us. So please go ahead, Luisa Fernanda.
Hola
Hello.
nuevamente a todos
Hello
ustedes.
once again to
Me da
everyone.
mucho gusto. Mi nombre es Luisa
I'm
Fernanda. Tengo
nice
20
to be
años
here.
y
My name is
soy de
Luisa Fernanda. I'm
Colombia.
15 years old. I'm from
Vengo
Colombia.
del grupo
So
organizador
I'm
llamado
from
Sobre
the
Movilidad Humana.
group of
Bueno, para responder a
human
la pregunta,
mobility. And to
en
answer
varios
this
países
question,
vemos que
in
existen
most
diferentes
countries, we know we
políticas
have certain public
que
policies that
buscan
exist
impulsar la crianza
that
positiva.
seek to promote
Estas políticas pueden
positive
incluir
parenting.
programas
And these
que
policies
apoyan a
might
las
involve
familias, iniciativas
programs
para prevenir la
of family
violencia y el
support
maltrato infantil,
to
en campañas de concientización sobre prácticas parentales efectivas y saludables.
prevent violence and
Algunas
to promote
acciones
this.
y
We
programas
also have
buscan
laws and
proteger a
programs
los
that
niños
seek to
y los
provide protection
adolescentes
for
y
children and
promover la
teenagers
crianza
and
positiva,
promote positive
incluyendo las
parenting,
políticas públicas para
such as
apoyar a
public
las familias
policies
en
to
situaciones
support
más vulnerables.
families in more vulnerable
Bueno, por mi parte les voy
circumstances
a dar a
or
conocer las
situations.
leyes que
From my
existen
part, I will
en Colombia
tell you a
y
little
en
bit about
Bogotá
these laws that exist in
y en
Colombia, in
Guatemala.
Honduras,
Mi
and
compañera
Guatemala.
ya les dará las de los demás
My
países.
colleague will talk to you about the other
Colombia,
countries. In
una
Colombia,
ley súper
one
importante
lay,
es
a
la
very
ley
important law is the
1620 del 2013.
1620 law
Busca
from
brindar derecho a la
2013 that
educación y
seeks to
prevenir
guarantee the
violencia
right to
en el
education and to
escolar.
prevent and
Algunas
mitigate
acciones
school
públicas,
violence. Some
campañas de
public actions,
sensibilización para la detección del
sensibility
maltrato infantil y el
sensibility
fortalecimiento de
campaigns
las redes
to
de
prevent
apoyo a las familias y
child abuse
capacitación a los profesionales que trabajan
and
en la primera
to
infancia.
educate professionals that work
En
with the
Guatemala
first
podemos
infancy.
encontrar la ley
In
de
Guatemala, we can
adolescencia
find the
y
law of
de
integral
adolescencia.
protection
Esta
of
establece medidas de
childhood and
formación, protección y
teenagers,
educación,
and these
atención y
establish
cooperación
measures
integral
of
para la comunidad.
attention,
Algunas acciones públicas
repair to
medidas de
integrate
formación y sensibilización
to
sobre los derechos a
to
tener
childhood,
educación
and it's about
integral a la infancia,
rights,
fortalecimiento
prevention,
de apoyo
attention,
a la primera infancia,
integral
salud y educación.
to infancy and
En Honduras,
education as well.
una
In
ley
Honduras,
importante
we have another important law,
es
which is
la
the law, sorry,
La ley de protección
the law
integral
of integral
en nuestra
protection
adolescencia también,
for children and teenagers that
de
establishes
protección y atención.
protection and
Algunas acciones
attention
públicas o
measures.
planes
Some
que se han
um,
incentivado en este país
public attention and plans that
este
have
año,
been incentivized in these
especialmente la
countries,
primera infancia, que
in
busca
this
el
country's
desarrollo integral
first
de la primera
infancy
infancia mediante la
plan,
atención temprana en la nutrición y el acompañamiento de las familias,
early
que es
childhood
muy
plan with
importante
early
para los niños
attention, and
y
it's
todos
very
los
important
menores
with to
desde los
be
0 años de vida a, pues hasta siempre. Es una
to be
mentalidad
backed by their parents
también un programa
since
de
they're born.
alfabetización
Also,
fortalece la educación de los padres y la transmisión de
reading
conocimientos
program
y valores a sus hijos. Esto es
that
lo que he
provides them with
logrado junto al equipo y todos los miembros de la
reading
organización
classes.
que trabajamos en colaboración para alcanzar nuestros
This is
objetivos
literacy
y
programs.
generar un cambio. También por ello
So this is
asistimos
what
a
we've been
ferias y
focused
momentos
on to
de
promote
webinars
change. So
para dar a conocer, siempre para
it's
dar a
good that I'm a
conocer las voces de los
spokesperson in this
jóvenes,
webinar,
niños y
so I
adolescentes
can
que en algún momento
exhibit
también lo harán.
or highlight the
Y
voices of children and
agradecer
teenagers,
nuevamente la
which they
oportunidad
will
de
do so
participar
as
en este
well
webinar
afterwards.
y
So thank
es
you also
muy
for the opportunity
gratificante
to
para
work in
mí
this
ser
webinar.
parte de esta
It's
iniciativa.
very
Muchas
gratifying to
gracias.
me to be part of this initiative. Thank you very much. Thank you, Luisa Fernanda. So for us, it's very gratifying as well that you are with us, as well as everyone else, all the list of teenagers that are with us right now. So thank you very much. So I will yield the floor to Melissa. Good morning to everyone. My name is Melissa. I'm 16 years old. I'm from Lima, Peru. As Luisa mentioned, the laws and public actions to promote positive parenting exist in programs, initiatives, and public policies, inclusive public policies, and in the government. In my case, in Peru, I have the ley number 30,443 that promotes positive parenting and seeks to prevent violence. In the in many cases for children and teenagers, we have several government programs that support this policy, this initiative. And for another part, violence prevention laws you can find in many parts of America, such as in Mexico, and in the Convention of Children's Rights and the General Law of Children and Teenagers' Rights. Any form of violence is not justified, and it's prohibited that the people that have a relationship with children or teenagers to have any violence against them. So we're seeking the ways to promote and support these rights and to promote inclusive policies, the ones that are established. Also in Costa Rica, we have a peaceful relationship law. And some we also have some awareness campaigns. We have established the laws of growth together. So they can receive the love they need to prevent violence and also to promote positive parenting for children and teenagers. Nevertheless, in spite of all these public policies that have been implemented, it does not mean that there's a very strong path in front of us. So it's important to promote participation of children and teenagers and speak of subjects that they're interested in and the countries to promote their rights. For this reason, I accepted to be a spokesperson so I can represent the voice of these children and teenagers that they need a place of to participate, a place at the table in which they can speak about important subjects, issues, and seek collective agreement for the protections of their own rights. So this is the voice of those that need to be heard because we have so many public policies, initiatives, and this must be done in a dialogue, within a dialogue of children and teenagers, where they can participate and come to an agreement with adults so they can put implement these inclusive initiatives and give the children and teenagers a place. Hey, thank you very much, Melissa. That's super. Both have situated and mentioned. I want to recognize because it's very impressive that in your age you have this knowledge about the laws of your country. Not anyone does this. And our recognition as well, because you as spokespeople, but all the group, because everyone has responded in the work that we've done related to these laws. And you have been doing research, and they have detected that there are some laws and norms, programs, acts, amendments towards positive parenting. You've spoken about awareness campaigns that must start in early childhood from when they're 0 years old towards forever. So, upon this foundation that Luisa and Melissa has set, I once again invite you to further place bricks upon these foundations. We have an intervention from Nicola from Brazil. Please to remind you that we have Portuguese and English interpretations.
Olá, boa tarde. Eu sou o Nicolas Cauã, do Brasil, represento a Rede Surco Brasil. E eu
I am
gostaria de
Nicolas
dizer
from
que no
Brazil.
Brasil, mais especificamente no Ceará, já existe uma implantação efetiva da
We already
educação
have
positiva
the
como política
positive
pública, recomendando
parenting
todas as ações
implementation as
mundial de
public
saúde
policy.
como
It
uma
is
das
recommended by
metodologias mais
the
eficazes para reduzir o risco de
OMS
violência
by
contra
as
crianças.
one of the most
Essa
important
técnica foi
methodologies to
adaptada aqui
reduce
no
the risk of
Ceará
violence
em
towards children.
2020 e já
This
está
technique
presente em
was
24
adopted here
municípios do
in
estado.
2020 and is
Infelizmente, não é
present in
100%
24
efetuado,
municipalities of the state.
mas já
It's
estamos
not
desenvolvendo
100%
focado
effective, but
diretamente
we
na
already
parentalização
have
positiva enquanto política
moved
pública
forward
no
in
Brasil,
positive
mas eu gostaria de
parenting
trazer
as a
aqui
public
o
policy
estado
in
do Ceará,
Brazil.
que já
But I would
efetiva
also
esse
like
direito de
to
crianças e adolescentes para
mention that the
todas as
state
famílias que tenham crianças e que
make
necessitam
effective
aprender sobre a
this
parentalidade
policy
positiva
towards
e a
all the
forma de
families that
como
have
educar
children and
suas
need to learn
crianças e
about
seus
positive
adolescentes de uma
parenting,
maneira
how
saudável.
to
Muito obrigado.
raise their children in a healthy manner. Thank you very much. Thank you. This is very important. Nicolas mentions once again the importance of supporting adults, mothers, fathers, parents, and to teach them. And we are very grateful that you're so young and they tell us this from such a young age. So this is very, very important. We are very grateful for this. Once upon a time, a kid told me, "Hey, parents need psychologists to help them be parents." Well, let's move on. Angelina from Ecuador, and
Hola,
then
muy
Juan
buenas noches
Martin.
con todos. Mi
Uh,
nombre es
Hi,
Angelina,
my
soy de
name is
Ecuador
Angelina. Good
y
day
de
to
verdad que
everyone.
muchas
I'm from
gracias
Ecuador.
por ser
And this
invitada
morning,
y
I
en
represent the
definición
movement to
hablaré
be
acerca de la realidad de mi país.
a
El problema
child,
es que
and I will
existen
speak about
barreras
the reality of
legales y
my
leyes
country.
vigentes,
There are
pero que lamentablemente
laws,
no van muy
but that
relacionadas con la
unfortunately
realidad que la
they're
mayoría de
not quite
población vive.
related to the
En mi
reality
caso,
that
nosotros
children
contamos
and
con una
teenagers
ley que fue modificada por
experience.
última vez en
We have a
2009,
law
la
that
cual nos
has
hace
been modified
preguntarnos como
in
sociedad qué
2009,
está
and
fallando en
it
nuestro
leads us to
país,
ask ourselves as a society
porque este proceso se
what's
puede llevar
not
adelantado con
working
el debate
when they
sobre la
upgrade these logs.
educación integral en niñez y
And with
adolescencia.
Copina, different
Lamentablemente, no
codes
existe
of
una
child
correcta
supporting
representación del
laws,
Estado para
but the
hacer
state did
escuchar
not
y dar
represent
voz de la niñez y
them,
adolescencia.
and they're not listening
Entonces,
to the voice of
lamentablemente,
children and teenagers. So
no se
even
puede hablar
though,
porque
unfortunately,
cuidar la realidad de
laws
la niñez y adolescencia, más que
are
nada
like
tratar de
this,
su
they
desarrollo
are
desde
worried
el
about
inicio
the
educativo y
development
la
of
crianza,
children and
basado en una
teenagers
integral,
from
basado
their
en
early
una
childhood,
participación directa del
but
Estado
there's
en
not a
generar y de
direct
preguntarnos o de hacer conciencia de qué está pasando con
concern
el
about
crecimiento y
generating
crianza
consciousness.
en
What's
esta etapa
going
del
on with
desarrollo de la
these
niñez y adolescencia.
cultural patterns that are affecting teenagers and children, and how they're related to society, how they represent their emotions, how they present themselves, their mental health, and how they ask for help to others. They ask others for help because sometimes we feel more comfortable speaking about this with other teenagers. But what can we do if we unfortunately do not have a clear and specific knowledge of how to take care of ourselves, how to open up our trust about problems that sometimes start at home, but we cannot talk to other adults about this? Of course, parents also need psychologists. They need help because we're not claiming something that they could not have. uh, Positive parenting, with being assertive, with confidence and self-esteem. But we need to underline these issues, working through different workshops together so we can generate confidence. And as parents to identify as teenagers, it's very hard to identify that vulnerability because they always want to be right and to be all right towards us. But to start this cycle with love, with patience, and to sometimes reopening wounds that are still in us as adults, we can address this paternity that they too deserved, and but to open ourselves to family harmony, and open up a space in our homes that will allow us to speak plainly about what happens to us in school, with our friends, or with problems that we feel in our mental health and development as a teenager. Thank you. Thank you, Angelina. So Angelina is mentioning these are my words. I'm summarizing. Let's make a sandwich where we can work with adults, but also with us. And if that we are asked, and if we are listened to, they will understand us much better. So we will shift what adults of my age and beyond, and younger ones, what we learned. As you well said, with all these forms of abuse. Please go ahead, Martin. Hello, hello. Good morning to everyone. I'd like to congratulate all the children and teenagers that have shared their testimonies with us. I would also like to compliment what Angelina said. And what defies us, to encourage you to see that what defies us is a cultural change. And we've mentioned the adult centrism, and adult people believe that they're educating when they use violence. And this, if we do not change it, this will continue being the same way. And we have insisted throughout time that laws are not magical. They do not shift reality. They help design public policies. They orient actions from institutions. But when this is not translated in concrete actions by the institutions and in budgets, there's little that government workers can do. We usually have civil servants or officials. We have extreme responses. Sometimes they're not being put into place. Positive parenting or questioning the old ways of education and traditional parenting based on violence. It's ignored. We're not paying attention to it. It goes, there's a lot of impunity. What you were mentioning at first, we're not strengthening the families. There's no prevention, and we are in a culture of a populist culture. And this leads us, in the case of Mexico, that we have mothers and women that well, it's excessive, disproportionate from institutions, that they alienate their children and they feed their discourse of groups that are anti-right wing or anti-rights, not right wing, that they're violating their rights. Don't get involved with my children. I raise my children, and they have certain resistance to cultural change to recognize children and teenagers as people with full rights and to administer punishment as a means of control. So we need the states to act accordingly, and especially in the preventive part, and especially with families that have violence. It doesn't mean to put them behind bars, place them behind bars, but overall, there's some norms, but yes, to focus on cultural change. Put in a big effort on cultural change. Please, Rosana Cardines.
Hi, good
Rosana?
morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and while we do not have any specific legislation that speaks specifically to positive parenting, oh, sorry, I should start by saying I'm representing as a government worker, that Juan Martin was just talking about. And so I do understand the challenges in terms of the government, the technical officers, having, so to speak, the research, the information to implement change, but having to convince the powers that be that we need to go in this particular direction. While in Trinidad and Tobago, we do not have legislation that speaks specifically to positive parenting, we find that the organizations on the ground, the NGOs, and even some of our children's community residences, the staff there definitely implement positive parenting practices. And we have a few children's homes that specifically use positive parenting curriculum to train staff and to implement in the homes. And so we have quite a few institutions that do work towards improving how parenting is done. Beyond the government ministries, we have a authority, that's the police service, as well as the children's authority. But generally in this season, my government ministry, that's the division, the Gender and Child Affairs Division, we are focusing on educating persons in positions of trust and parents, especially on the rights of a child, because we find that by emphasizing education on child rights, it sets parents up for a better foundation to understand the concepts of positive parenting. And in terms of the opposition to it, it comes back to the parents of today not having the language around child rights, or even recognizing that the convention was not around when we were children, our parents my age when we were children. So we're focusing on a lot more education around child rights and dealing with those issues, with the hopes that positive parenting messaging that is shared through the other institutions, the other government agencies, it will hit home. But our legislation focuses more specifically on child protection as opposed to holding parents specifically into account. But there is public debate on that, things like charging parents when children commit infractions and holding parents to account for the way in which they care for children and in the way in which children respond to issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosana from Trinidad y Tobago. I'm going to read a comment from Lubia Chamalen. What happens is that no one is born in parenting life with a guide. But I think that the first that we must support it are the responsible adults and these first early educators that help to also to raise children. If an adult does not have an emotional or mental health, they cannot be we cannot give what we don't have. They cannot help this way. So Paula Lázaro, and we will head over to the third question.
Sí, Fernando, gracias.
Yes,
Me
thank you,
gustaría
Fernando.
agregar
My commentary is very
algunos
brief, and
comentarios, por
I
ejemplo, el de Melissa, que hablaba de
mention once
crear
again some comments
talleres
from
para las
Melissa. She
personas
mentioned that there are
vulnerables en su vida.
workshops
El de
that are
Nicolás, que
headed
hablaba
towards
de que
awareness.
apoyar los
Nicolas that
derechos
mentions that even
fundamental
though
para
in
personas
Brazil they
no
implement
son
certain
100%
actions,
efectivas.
they're
Entonces,
not
como que
100%
la
effective.
mirada es cuál es el
So
reto o la
the
necesidad,
view,
Martín,
the
el
point of
cambio
view is
cultural que
which is
tenemos
the
que ir
challenge.
avanzando.
Cultural
Pero
change, they've
entonces
mentioned
hay
it.
que ver
So, but we also have to look at
que lo que
the
mencionábamos,
challenge.
tal vez un
Is the
cambio,
challenge that we're not doing it
tal vez
correctly?
mayor
Perhaps
atención
a change in
y
strategy,
recalcar la
um,
importancia de la
better
prevención
decision,
y de
and to
evaluación de
underline the
políticas públicas.
importance of
Porque al final de
public
cuentas nosotros
policies.
podemos pensar que
Because
lo estamos
we might
haciendo
think
bien,
that
pero
we're
en
doing it
esa
correctly, but in
evaluación
that
es donde
evaluation
nos
and
damos cuenta del
measurement of
impacto que
public
hay
policies is where
efectivamente
we
sobre la garantía de los derechos
realize
de niñas, niños y adolescentes. Esto.
if it's being done so correctly within the rights of children and teenagers. Well, we are in the last part of this positive parenting webinar. And the question is, do you know if there are institutions that exist that take care of positive parenting in your country? Do you know any institution that promotes or guarantees positive parenting if in your country? So we want to ask Carla from Mexico to be the spokesperson of this joint effort. Please, Carla, go ahead.
Okay, buenos días. Primero que
So,
nada,
good
mi nombre
morning.
es
First of
Carla
all, my name
Ivana.
is Carla Ivana.
Soy
I am
del país México y tengo
from
15
Mexico.
años. Una de
I'm
las cosas
15
que más
years
me
old.
gustan de mi
And one of
país
the things that I
son la
like
comida
most
y las
about my
tradiciones
country is
coloridas y
food,
llenas de
traditions,
diversidad.
colorful traditions,
Nosotros
that
como
its diversity.
instituciones
And we as
ponemos
spokespeople
centros que
know of
apoyan para que todos
organization
los niños y
centers that
adolescentes
support
crezcan y se
children and
desarrollen en un
teenagers so
ambiente
they can
con crianza
grow
positiva.
up and
Pero es
develop in an
importante que
environment of
todos, tanto
positive
los demás
parenting,
niños como adultos, tengan
positive
conocimiento de su
raising. But it's
existencia.
important that
Nosotros desde cierto
us
punto
children as well as
hablamos
adults know of their
desde
existence.
nuestra
We
visión de
speak from our
privilegio, ¿no?
vision
Que
of
conocemos que
privilege
estamos
because we
rodeados en
know
un
and we're
entorno
surrounded
en el
by an
que
environment
pues
in which
tenemos conocimiento, tenemos contactos con
we
este
have
tipo de
knowledge, we have
organizaciones, con este tipo
contact
de
with
comisiones
these kind of
y
commissions,
algunas
organizations, and
personas no.
perhaps other
Hace
people do not.
poquito, de hecho, en los
A
anuncios de
short
aquí
time
de
ago, in
México
some
sale de personas que no
ads
conocen o que no
by
simplemente no saben
Mexico,
de qué
some
significan las siglas de la
publicity,
CNDH,
many
que no
people don't
saben
know
ejercer
what
sus derechos.
the
Eso también
institution
es
stands for.
difícil.
They
Imagínate, si
don't know
una
their
persona adulta
rights.
no conoce sus
Imagine that if
derechos,
an
¿qué
adult
le
does
espera a un
not know
niño o
their
niña
rights,
adolescente? O sea,
what
es
do
triste esta realidad, ¿no?
what do
Y
children and teenagers
sobre
have to
todo,
look
esa
forward
es
to?
una de las
So it's a
partes
sad reality. This
de
is
los
one of the
motivos por los
main
cuales a mí me
motives
tocó ser vocera para
that
esto,
I
que pues se rompa la
by which I
cadena, ¿no?
wanted to
Ya
be
tantos
a
años de
speaker
no conocer
and
nuestros
break the
derechos, ya
chain.
tantos
So many
años de
years of not
tiempo
knowing our rights, so
mantener
long
oprimidos,
that
creo que ya es
this
hora
has been
y de empezar a
going on
desarrollarnos. No
to
lo
be
hago,
oppressed.
tenemos,
And
tenemos
I think it's time for us to
un
develop.
estigma de que
We
conocer
have
nuestros
a
derechos es para defendernos y buscar pleito, pero pues no es
we
así, es
have a
simplemente
stigma
para
that to know our
acomodarle
rights
y
is
hasta qué
to be
punto podemos
rebellious, but
llegarlo,
no,
¿no?
it's only to know what the rights we have
Algunas
and
de las
where we
más
can
importantes y destacadas son
reach.
la UNICEF,
And one of the
la
more important
CNDH.
and
En mi
is
país,
CONICET,
México, está ICIS,
CNDH. In
está
my country,
Sipinna.
there's
En Guatemala,
Sipinna.
la
In
NPH, que son
Guatemala,
nuestros pequeños
MPH
humanos.
are
En
which
Colombia,
means
el
are small human
ICBF,
beings.
Instituto Colombiano
In
de Derechos
Colombia, el
Familiar, la
ICBF,
Defensoría del
CBF,
Pueblo,
and
así
in
como
Peru,
internacionales están
the
Save the
Defensoría del
Children,
Pueblo,
que ya la mayoría de
as
ustedes
well as
¿no? lo
Save the
hemos visto en
Children.
anuncios y
Most of
televisiones.
us have seen this
Reitero que
in
bueno, mi
ads of
función
these
o
editions,
o la
and I reiterate
participación
that
como vocera es
my
apoyar, dar
function as a
conocimiento a
speaker
las
is to
siguientes generaciones, a
support,
la mía, a las
to
generaciones que a lo mejor ya están siendo
mm,
papás de esto,
exhibit
porque es algo
or
importante, es un
showcase
hecho que
all
tenemos
this
que
because it's
conocer, es
very
un hecho que
important that
tenemos
we
que
need
ya
to know these facts.
tomarlo en cuenta porque es
That in
necesario para
fact
un
we
buen
need
desarrollo
to
y para poder
have this
vivir
knowledge
plenamente
for
en
proper
paz.
development and to
Por mi
have
parte
a
es todo. Muchas
happy
gracias.
life from my part, that is all. Thank you very much. Hey, Carla, thank you very much. She's talking to us about many things, but what identify is two things. Institutions should promote human rights. She's very clear about mentioning this. If even adults don't know their human rights, what's in store for us? But it's very important for children to know their rights and teenagers as well. And there are several institutions as Mexico that educate on human rights and to amplify these rights towards others as well. So please, if you want to comment on what Carla mentioned, the first person that's coming on is Nicolas.
Bom, boa tarde novamente. Eu gostaria de acrescentar e
I
esclarecer
would like
um
to
ponto anterior que eu havia citado. É que o Ceará, primeiramente, é um estado do Brasil, certo? E nele
where
está
we
sendo
have a state in
efetivado
Brazil,
a parentalidade positiva. Mas
and
também
it's
gostaria de
being
acrescentar que o Congresso já
where
está,
positive
o Congresso
parenting
Nacional
is
do
being
Brasil já
promoted.
está
But I will
buscando
also would like to
efetivar
add
uma
that the
lei
National Congress
específica
is
para a
seeking
parentalidade
to
positiva, para que a parentalidade positiva
make
seja
a
realmente
specific law effective
efetivada em
for
nosso
positive
país.
parenting
Gostaria também de
in our
falar que temos
country.
algumas
I'd like
instituições
to also
que já
mention
fazem esse
that
trabalho de
we have
divulgação
several
do
institutions
direito
that
à
do carry out
parentalidade
this work
positiva e ao cuidado
with the right
saudável
of
para as nossas
positive
crianças e
parenting
os nossos
and a
adolescentes.
healthy
E
care
só em
for
resposta ao
our
Rosane
children and
também, né,
teenagers.
que ela falou sobre a efetivação de leis,
Responding to
eu
what
gostaria
Rosanna
de
mentioned
pontuar que aqui no Brasil, o
about
nosso
making laws
Congresso Nacional
effective,
já estão transitando leis
implementing laws,
que
I'd like
pautam
to
a
mention that in
parentalidade
Brazil,
positiva como um
there are
trabalho
several laws in
nacional a
transit
ser
of
executado.
positive
Obrigado.
parenting to be executed. They're in transit for execution. Thank you, Nicolas. It's very important to do this nationally. Positive parenting, I think it's a very important idea, not just as isolated actions, as it's been done so far, more or less, but one big action that will envelop the whole community. So please go ahead, Angelina. Good morning to you all once again. In fact, in my country, we have small spaces in which, well, it's just in the capital where it's being implemented, but in certain rural or urban areas, they don't have this approximation, this assertiveness with parts positive parenting. How can we apply it? How will it be more doable? How do I know how my brother or parents are behaving? And what I've learned about positive parenting is what I've learned through the internet. So I'm conscious that I have a privileged position and I have access, and so I can learn about this. But I'm worried about the rural area. They don't have this same access to information, and they live under cultural patterns that are very strong, and they don't know what to do about it. I think it's necessary to have the incentives towards a public policy that has teenagers and children's opinions, such as certain institutions have been working towards, because there are many international institutions that work up on these issues. But as I mentioned, the government's not quite interested in this. And we need an initiative from early childhood on to provide safe spaces to create a movement that generates strength. So, with policies and ideas and civil societies present in the government, our voice can be heard in a more assertive way. And they have a clear idea that starts with early childhood. What's our objective to promote positive parenting in our country? And of course, how this will improve our society with the passing of time. Being conscious that a high amount of teenagers are being parents right now. So how can we address this problem from the roots, and that will also allow us to speak of sex ed from our homes. Thank you very much. I think everything you've said so far is very important. So before Patricia speaks, I've learned on internet, that's what she says, I've learned from positive parenting. What have you learned on internet from positive parenting? Because what you hear, if you can share it with us, so we can make a commitment to include this knowledge in our programs. Well, mostly what I have more present is empathy, assertive communication since one is young, that teach them to communicate that, to say no if they don't feel comfortable. Do not have secrets with other children, because we're teaching them that they shouldn't have secrets with elder people, but they should not have to do so with other children as well. So if they find themselves in danger with an adult, that they feel in a situation, they feel secure to say no. They don't feel comfortable guarding a secret. For example, for a child, for a 4-year-old child, it's important to state that they don't have the desire that their mother has to eat something or not. It's very important for children that young to do so, and to not feel comfortable, to feel comfortable with their parents saying, I don't feel comfortable with that. So it's very important to see that a new generation is being more, it's communicating more, is speaking from their comfort, and for, of course, with respect, because we can say that many people think that positive parenting is let children do whatever they want, and have certain behaviors that can affect their development. So it's necessary to highlight this fine line that positive parenting can lead them to express their emotions, to say no, but at the same time, give them the ease of doing what they want to do if it doesn't affect them negatively, and to have safe spaces to develop as a child, as a teenager, and to have this control as an adult as a result of this, to address anxiety, all this. So it's great that we can have a correct management of all these issues since we're young. Thank you very much, Angelina. Effectively, from early childhood, to learn to empathize, to listen to communicate. I agree with you as well. I've seen parents on the street speaking to their children, how they bow down to their eye level. They use a softer voice when talking to them, how they set certain limits, or this is very nice to see, and we should see this more frequently. Okay. Whoever wants to participate, please take the mic. Coming from this
Gracias.
this
Pues yo creo que
detonant
parte
question.
de este comentario que nos hacía
So I come from
sería
this comment that Angelina was speaking of,
cómo es que estamos hablando desde lo que los
how
adultos
we
no
speak
tuvimos,
from
que ellos
what adults, we as adults didn't have, and how she as a teenager recognizes and visualizes this, that adults cannot even put into words. We do not identify, or it's hard for us to identify from these experiences that perhaps we didn't have this possibility to experience. But I also agree with the importance that of professionalizing this, and training and making people aware, especially the ones that are working, accompanying families, supporting the families with this shift towards a new paradigm. I think it's quite a strong challenge as actors, as civil society organisms, associations, wherever we are in the trenches, to have this awareness, this empathy, and this recognition of how to treat and listen to, not listening and judging, but being with. So this is very important as how to see how the services, and we would have to consider all this diversity of families, their context, their individual contexts, and what their experience is, because it's not one single model. You mentioned this. How can it be that people that have the same access that I have, but we have many families that do not have access to services, access to basic needs, if they don't contemplate the support? So, so these programs have to come out of the specific family needs. And I think it's very important to have an interinstitutional coordination, because each one of the actors, it's not all of them work directly with the family. And we also support, there's medical service, there's education. Each one of us to be in the same on the same page and to accompany and to be a sensitive tribe that we support throughout parenting and raising. Thank you very much. Yes, as a group to accompany parenting as adults, that we work with teenagers and to have an internal view towards a cultural change. So I'm going to read two comments from the chat. Just a moment, please. Silvia Correa mentions we have different organizations that work on positive parenting, from tenderness in Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico. All of them with a work oriented, with working with the children and their parents. Amidst to say we cannot separate one from another. Ricardo Güemes from Instituto Interamericano, how important it is to recognize that the privilege can bias public debate on such important issues such as this one. There is so much to do to close the gaps of inequality in our regions. Great, genius. The interventions of the teenagers, please. I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to participate. Can we continue? We're on the final stretch, home stretch. Marta Benitez, please go ahead. Thank you very much, Fernando. I was paying a lot of attention, listening to the children and teenagers and all the people that are speaking of positive parenting. I'm very passionate about this subject, and I want to value the selection of this subject in the forum, because I think it's very strategic, this thematic towards teenagers, towards parents. And the great challenge we have in front of us is how do we promote this strategic line, not just centralized in the capital, but how can we build different actions through subnational governments? I think it's the most strategic way to build upon citizenship, to shift cultural practices, to focus on feminists in a less threatening way towards parents within the focus of rights and also the challenges we have in the systems in this moment in the region that has to do with the weakness and of the preventive focus, and also the wellness of the families and the children and teenagers. It's something that goes through every generation, a space of intergenerational articulation and create a space that can be done throughout a lifetime, be it parents, be it children. And we need to work on children, not only since they're young, but all the way towards adolescence. So that's what I wanted to mention and congratulate the organization.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hello, good afternoon to everyone here. I'm Nora Pulido from Argentina, from the Colectivo de Derechos de Infancia y Adolescencia. I actually represent the South Network of Equality to defend children and teenagers from South America. Well, I thought it was very interesting, the intergenerational dialogue. I rescue the words of the teenagers that spoke. I think that they were very precise, especially on the subject of two subjects that were very interesting. On one side, Angelina from Ecuador, I could say that in our southern countries, something happens as well. We have some legislative norms and frameworks, and sometimes with programs for care. And in my country, I have a system of promotion. It works more in certain provinces than in others, but what we come to see, as Angelina mentioned, is a gap between the normative framework of respect towards human rights and the access that population have towards really enjoying their human rights because of lack of specific and massive policies, because that may think that our countries are very populated and have a large young population. So there's not really an access to these programs. So the system for protection, that's what it's called, is in many cases collapsed because of the the requests, because there's a lot of violence towards children and teenagers. So what we're interested in today, it's not so strongly developed. People are not so well trained. And on another side, I found it very interesting. And our colleague from Brazil, he spoke of this program. It would be the one we see that is very necessary of positive parenting, of working with the families as well as with the children and teenagers. Another colleague spoke of other programs, international programs, because sometimes dialogue cannot be open within their family. And we can also say that dialogue within the between the families and public institutions is also difficult because sometimes the state practices appear as persecution practices towards the family and not as support and care. We need to reinforce inversion from the state in promotional programs, not just resources and programs to help judicially in most cases, but to have a strong investment on prevention.
Bueno,
This is
muchas
what we
gracias
see
por la
in the
posibilidad de
South.
dialogar.
Well, thank you very much for the
Encantada de estar
possibility
acá.
to have this
Mucho gusto
dialogue.
de
I'm
conocerlos
very
a
happy
todos
to
y
be
todas.
here, and I'm very happy
Gracias, Nora. Un
to
gusto
know all of you.
conocerte. Gracias por tu
Thank you, Nora.
aportación.
We're
Leo
very
el
happy to
comentario
know you as well, to
del
meet
chat,
you.
por favor.
And I will read a
Este,
comment from the
María
chat,
Garcete,
please.
Marta, eres una gran
Maria
profesora
Garcete. Marta, you're a
de
great
disciplina positiva en la crianza
teacher on
cotidiana.
positive
Es relevante
parenting
que este tema se
in
posicione
daily
desde las niñas, niños y
parenting and
adolescentes.
raising.
Coincido
And
contigo en
it's
la
very
necesidad de
important, very interesting that
reestructurar
we
la
see these
atención
subjects from the teenagers
Muchas gracias.
and children
Bien,
and your
¿alguna otra
contributions as well.
aportación?
Is there any other
Bien.
contribution someone would like to make?
Ok, entonces estamos
Okay,
en
so we're
la recta final. Estamos
on
concluyendo este espacio.
in the home
Entonces,
stretch, and we're concluding
cerramos
this
ya
meeting, and we're going
en
to
la hora.
close
Cerramos este espacio
the
después
space,
de
the session
terminar la primera
concluded
parte sobre
of this
crianza
first part of the webinar on positive parenting, positive raising. So I thank you very much for your contributions, the teenagers, what they said,
las y los adultos
what
que
they spoke of, and as well as the
y
adults
aportando
that are
desde
here
la
and
visión, desde la
contributing
experiencia
from
de
the
las
vision, from the
niñas
experience
y
of
los adolescentes que
children
han
and
estado
teenagers who
trabajando
have been
arduamente
working
para
hand
aportar
by hand
en
with us
esta
to
casa que
contribute
estamos
in
construyendo,
this
que es
home we are
Declaración de
building,
Nuevo León.
which
Muy bien,
is this house, which
dos
is the Nuevo
anuncios muy
León
rápidos, todavía
Declaration.
no se vayan.
Two quick,
Sigue una otra parte del siguiente tema, tiene que ver
we will have the
el
second part of
las
this
recomendaciones de los
second
anteriores
subject, which has
foros
to do
Sipinna,
with
el cual
recommendations,
será moderada por
Sipinna
mi
Forum,
colega
which will be
Mariana Echevarne del INAU
moderated
Uruguay,
by
la
my
moderadora.
colleague.
Pero antes, dos anuncios.
But before
Uno,
that, two announcements.
ustedes van a
One
poder,
is
además de
you will
expresar su
be
opinión, y a todas las
able
personas
to,
que nos están viendo, muchas
besides
gracias.
sharing
Vamos a
your
compartirles el link
opinion,
para
we
un
will
cuestionario,
share this link
preguntas
for
motivadoras que hemos
tool
hablado
for
en
you,
en
a
el
form,
los webinars pasados
and these
y y venideros. Entonces, están concentradas en un
these
cuestionario
trigger
para todas las
questions
edades. Las chicas y chicos
are
que están
based
acá
on
pueden contestar nuevamente, aunque ya hayan respondido
these forms.
y compartirlo con sus grupos organizados también y aquí a los adultos
And
que
we
les
have
puedan
questions in
ayudar
this form
para
that you can
explicar
share with your groups, with
proceso
with
y
adults, with the
dinámica.
children, to explain
Por favor,
this
quiero pedirle a mis colegas
a
que
little, this
proyecten
process.
explicativo.
I will ask my colleagues to project this video.
¿Sabes qué es el foro Sipinna? Es un espacio donde se
Do you know what
comparten
Sipinna
ideas y
Forum is? It's a
experiencias que
space where
realizan temas que
ideas and
contribuyen para
experiences
que
are
los niños,
shared
niñas y
that help
adolescentes en las Américas
that
hagan mejor su
assistance
trabajo y
for
estén
promotions
contentos,
towards
felices y sean felices.
children
Este
and
año, Sipinna será
teenagers
la sede de la cuarta edición de
can
este foro. Y en colaboración con
experience
World
their
Vision,
rights and
hemos preparado
live a
podcast
happy
con
life.
opinión sobre los
In
temas que
collaboration with
tratamos en
World
cada uno.
Vision, we have
Visita
prepared this space so you can share
www.libreviolencia.org/foro
your
En
opinion
este
on
espacio
what we've
encontrarás
been
4 apartados que
talking
abordarán
about.
las preguntas de
In this
cada uno de
space, you will
estos temas.
find 4
Políticas
parts
públicas para
that
la
will
salud y
lead
la
you to
educación,
each one of the
desafíos y avances para la
subjects: public
participación de
policy for
sociedades
health and
civiles y sistemas de
education,
protección,
challenges
crianza
and
efectiva
improvement
y
of
seguimiento a las recomendaciones del
civil
foro
society
Sipinna anterior.
participation and protection
Elige el
systems,
tema que quieras
positive
participar.
positive
Tienes la
parenting,
oportunidad,
and
responde a todos.
recommendations.
Si
Please
eres un
choose the
niño o
subject that you would
adolescente,
like to
además de
participate in,
responder las
and you can
preguntas,
do so in all
participa
of
con
them.
tu
If you're a
equipo.
child or
Puedes
you're a
compartir un
teenager,
dibujo,
besides
un
the
cuento,
question, we
un
have
cómic, un
an
podcast o
options
lo que tú
in which you
prefieras.
can share a
Solo
drawing, a
hazte bolas de
podcast, a
imaginación y
comic,
responde a
whatever
la
you
pregunta.
want.
¿Cómo
Just
mejorarías
let
la
your
vida de los
imagination
niños,
fly and
niñas y
answer the
adolescentes
question:
en el
how would
continente
you
americano?
improve
El foro Sipinna es
children's
un espacio
and
para todos
teenagers'
y
lives
todos y tu opinión es muy importante.
in the American continent? Your opinion is very important to us, for
Gracias. Ya
us.
saben, ya lo colocaron en
So
el
you
chat.
know, if they've
Agradecemos a
shared the link in the chat, and we
esta
thank World
plataforma
Vision
Niñez
in their
Libre de
platform,
Violencia.org. Nos permitieron
Niñez Libre de Violencia, a childhood
para
that's
este
free of
proceso.
violence,
Muchas gracias, World Vision.
conversation,
El buzón que le hemos llamado, el cuestionario
and
con las
the
preguntas
mailbox that
Muy bien,
we also
yo
have with the
agradezco mucho por
detonating
haber
questions
podido volver a
or
moderar.
triggers.